Hey, ladies, welcome to our May conversation of women and blended families. My name is Gayla Grace. I serve on the Family Life Blended team, where our ministry is all about serving blended families. And today, the focus of our conversation is on managing the expectation gap when our expectations collide with hard realities of blended family life. My guest, Stacy Holsapple, understands that well, and you will love hearing her story. If you haven't joined us before, we are live the second Tuesday of every month at 12 p.m. Central on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube on the Family Life Blended page. We have a different guest each month with a different topic. Now, before we get started, I love to hear who is with me, who is joining me live. Leave me your name. Tell me where you're from, where you're listening from or watching from. And I have a question about how is the month of May going for you? May has a lot happening for women in blended families. There's just a lot of events, a lot of activities. In fact, I've even heard it equated to the month of December, that there is so much going on that it feels like a holiday month. So throw up an emoji that tells me something about your feelings. Maybe you're frazzled because it just has felt a little hectic. Maybe you're sad because your Mother's Day didn't go as you had wanted. Or maybe you're happy today. You're loving the warmer weather. For those of you who live up north, maybe you're seeing some summer temperatures and you're enjoying that. I don't know, but I would love to know how you're doing, how the month of May is going for you, and find an emoji that matches that. Also, as we wait for ladies to come on, be sure and tag a friend who you know that would benefit from our conversation. Even if they can't join us now, they can always watch the recorded version later. And remember, we love to see your questions in the comments. Related to our topic today, we'll answer as many of them as we can live and also in the comments if we cannot get to them. There's one. Jessica from Tulsa is exhausted. Oh my goodness, I get that. Yes, I've had moments of that, honestly, this month also. Wow. You can keep throwing those up. I'm curious how you ladies are doing. But let me introduce our guest. Stacy Holsapple is a childless stepmom to 4 girls. She and her husband Rich married in 2014, and the girls at the time were 10, 11, and 2 13-year-olds. Those are twins. That's 4 girls. Did y'all get that? That is a lot of hormones in the same house. Those girls are now young adults. Rich and Stacy lead blended family ministry at their home church and virtual. Stacy is also an affiliate staff member with the Family Life Blended team. Welcome, Stacy. Thank you for joining me today.
Good morning, Gayla. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. I know you have a lot to share. Okay, here's some more feelings. One of them says Florida sunshine and sweating. Yeah, I get that. From Houston, howdy. And then Rachel from Baltimore, Maryland, May's a lot wrapping up as a school teacher and family obligations. Yeah, so she has a smiley face turned upside down. That makes a lot of sense. How about
Mhm.
you, Stacy? What would you say about your feelings so far for the month of May?
Overall, I think I would give May a smiley face. I don't know if it would be a big grin, but it's definitely a smiley face this year.
I like that. Would you say, let's go back to the early years as a stepmom. Do you remember what those emojis would look like back then?
Those would be more of the bawling my eyes out, struggling face, maybe the
Oh,
cringed mouth. Yeah. The
yes,
first years were very hard.
yes. I would say the same thing about our early years in a blended family. Yes. Robin is running to keep up. I've got somebody from Nashville, somebody from Arkansas. I'm not seeing any more emojis, but lots of people joining us, and I am so thankful for that. And we're going to get started, and then we can always keep up with what other feelings people have, because I think that's interesting to hear how the month is going. But Stacy, talk to me a little bit more about your story. Had you been married before? Were you familiar with step family life at all?
Yes, so this is actually my 3rd marriage. I've been married twice before. In my 2nd marriage, I was a stepmother to 2 boys, and I swore I would never do it again.
Really?
And here I am. God called me to a new family, and asked me to step into this role, and, it is only by His grace that we have gotten to where we are today.
So you went from 2 boys to 4 girls.
Yes.
Could you tell a difference in
Oh,
as
definitely.
a stepmom?
Mhm. Yes.
Wow.
I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't try to figure out what I was doing when I was a stepmom previously. I didn't know what I was doing when I became a stepmom this time, and the first years were really, really hard. But then I made a very intentional choice to start learning and to try to figure out how to do it differently,
Mhm,
and that was when we found all of the Smart Step resources,
mhm.
and, that has really made a difference.
I think that is a very important point that if we can educate ourselves, and honestly, I sometimes feel like people who come into blended family life as adults, if they've experienced it as a child, it's going to be different, but they're going to at least have a little bit of education. My husband was in step family life as a child, and he at least understood what it was like to have a step parent. I was clueless. I was raised in a traditional family. So I think anything we can do to educate ourselves, which is what you're saying in your the second go around as a stepmom that you really tried to do.
Yes.
And there's a lot of great resources out there now. I know people who follow Family Life Blended. You can see them all the time. We're always posting about them. But talk to me about expectations that you might have brought into your family.
I thought I was coming in with really low expectations. I thought I was doing good. And then I found out that I had expectations that I didn't know I had.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
I married into a family of night owls. They are all
Oh
up late.
no!
They don't necessarily know how to be quiet, especially when you've got teen and preteen girls that have high energy. Um, and I am not a night owl. I go to bed early. At the time, I was working a job where I needed to be up early in the morning. And so, just things around the house that I just kind of assumed would happen,
Right.
being respectful of the fact that somebody was sleeping, taking care of dishes. There were just things around the house that didn't get done that was kind of a surprise to me. But then I also think that I didn't expect things. So I was surprised by the expectations that I had to change, but then also the things that came in that I wasn't expecting and had to figure out how to walk well through.
Okay. So things that just kind of blindsided you. Is that what I hear
Mhm.
you saying? Uh huh.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's another common dynamic also, that even if we prepare ourselves the very best that we can, it's likely there are gonna be some things that we just didn't expect that
Yeah.
happen. The one of them probably where your everybody was a night owl.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess if how you would figure that out, in the dating stage, but until everybody's living in the same house is when some of those things show up that you just don't anticipate. Yeah.
Yeah, the dating season was very different than the married season and figuring out how to all be in the under the same roof all the time together.
Yeah.
Because when we were dating, I could go back to my apartment and have my quiet time, and, um, that changed.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the other thing in general about the dating season compared to the married season is sometimes the kids are more accepting of us, I feel like, as stepmoms when we're dating, because for one, we're kind of on our best behavior and we might not be trying to step into any kind of disciplinarian role at all. But then when we're all living in the same house and there's times that our husband isn't there and we're there with the kids, there's times that we do have to step into it a little bit. And I just think the kids aren't necessarily expecting that. And it's just our true colors kind of show when we're all living together, right?
Oh, absolutely, yes. More so, we were on a parenting schedule, when we first got married that we had the girls on the weekends,
Right.
and then during the school week, they were an hour away up at their mom's house. 2 years into our marriage, though, the situation changed and one of the girls needed to come live with us full time, and so then that was another situation that was completely unexpected, and we had to figure out how to
Mhm.
live together, not just on the weekends,
Mhm.
but all day, every day.
Wow. And that's a huge different change. So that was just one of the girls. It wasn't all the girls.
Right.
Mhm. And I've
Yeah.
seen that happen also. Sometimes kids get split up and sometimes those dynamics change. Well, talk to me about what you would consider your biggest challenge as you face the reality of step family life and you tried to work through these expectations. What was really challenging for you?
Mhm. I think the learning to let go. There was a lot that I needed to accept that the girls were already halfway through their growing up years. They
Yes.
had a mom, they had a dad. They didn't necessarily choose me or necessarily even want me. Things that maybe I would have liked to have taught them, or a role that maybe I would have liked to play, there wasn't passport given to me for that, or there wasn't space because that was already filled by another parent, which was completely appropriate. um, but learning how to let go of things that I would have liked to have seen in our family, and not build resentment, but truly be able to grieve it and go through a lament process and let that go.
Can you give me an example of that? A specific example of something?
Family dinners at the table.
Oh,
Because of
wow.
various schedules and a number of reasons, and this is not a slight to their mom or their dad, that just wasn't something that was demonstrated to our girls.
Mhm.
Dinner at the table was something that we did at holidays, and so I had to kind of let go of that and just accept that that wasn't how we were gonna do the dinner routine.
Mm.
And it's been interesting because, as they're moving into adulthood and I'm seeing them develop their own homes, there's been a couple of times where I've had to re-grieve something, that I wish that I would have been able to teach them.
Wow, that is very interesting. And I do feel like there are situations like that that we have to let go of. There might be other things that we decide are important enough to us that we want to go to bat, but we also have to recognize whether or not our husband is in the same court we are. And if they're not, then it's not something probably that's going to change. And I think that has to be part of the consideration. If even if it is super important to us, if it's really not important to our husband and it's their kids, then we have to really be willing to let it go. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great
yeah.
example. Another one I've heard talked about with stepmoms is being picky about how the stepkids ate, like what food they ate. And they came in just thinking these stepkids need to have a better diet and they're going to fix it. And it backfired on her. I think
Mhm.
that's another dynamic that we have to be aware of that we might have to let go of. I don't know if you dealt with any of that at all.
Not too much on that one, but I have heard that particular example from a few other stepmoms as well, so,
Mhm.
I know it's a common one.
Mhm. Yeah, it can be. Well, we've just come through Mother's Day. It was on Sunday, and Mother's Day can be a complicated day for
Mhm,
moms, stepmoms, biological moms. I mean, honestly, I've even as a biological mom have had hard Mother's Day related to some things with my biological girls. But talk to me, Stacey, about your early years as a Mother's Day. Were you surprised by the emotions that accompanied it? How did that go in the early years?
Mother's Day has always been a bag of very mixed emotions for me, and I've had to learn to be okay carrying a lot of different emotions at the same
Mhm.
time.
Right.
Um, for me, one of the more awkward parts was going to church. I knew I wasn't a mom, and I don't expect to be called mom, but I do motherly things, and I love the
Mhm.
girls, and I was trying to find a place in their lives. More often than not, we tried to make sure that they were with their mom on Mother's Day. Um, but the times that we would be in a church service and they would say, "Would all the moms stand up?" And I would be like, "Do I stand? Do I not stand?"
Right.
And it wasn't so much about what if do I know what my role is? Do I know if I should be standing or not? But if anybody was with us, if I stand, am I going to hurt their feelings or what
Yes.
are they going to think? So it was more of that, am I going to upset the day if I do this versus
Mhm.
being uncertain about how I fit. But
Mhm.
Mother's Day is just awkward. People don't know how to address me. They don't know if they should say happy Mother's Day or not. Um, it's gotten
Wow.
better, but it's when you don't have your own biological children and you only have stepchildren, um, there is a group of people that they just don't have any idea what to do with you for Mother's Day.
Isn't that interesting that as many step families as we have now, that people are still struggling with that. And so many people are step parents and are have a parenting role. I think it's just natural that you would wish somebody a happy Mother's Day, but I completely understand your feelings. And even sometimes I've been in situations where they'll ask how many kids you have. Well, for me, I have three biological kids and I have two stepkids. How many do I count? Do I count my stepkids? Do I?
Mhm.
Because it's just like you. If my stepchildren are with me, is that how are they going to feel about that? And it's different now, 30 years down the road for me. I would absolutely count my stepchildren every time. I have five kids. But in the early years, especially if they were with me, I would have to sit there and think, are they going to be offended if I count them as my kids when I know they have a biological mom? It is convoluted. Yeah, I completely understand.
Yeah, that one's very awkward and difficult to navigate.
The other thing I would say though is if our church really takes a position that we feel strongly that perhaps need to change, we can take the position of trying to address that. If we
Mhm.
know staff, if there's somebody on staff who we feel like is willing to consider a different angle, I think it's okay for us to approach them. I've done that in my own church and just say, here's something to consider as we're thinking about Mother's Day and how to be inclusive for all moms. And I've had a good experience with that. So, just something for those who might be listening and watching. If you had a hard situation at your church, don't just think, oh, this is the way it's always going to be and start skipping church. We can try to be a catalyst for change and try to help staff because sometimes it's just a matter of trying to help educate them that the way they're doing it can be offensive and not just to stepmoms, but to foster moms or adopted moms or moms who are struggling with infertility. I mean, there's so many things. So, but would you say, Stacy, then that Mother's Day is different now, 11 years later, as opposed to your early years?
Oh, very much so. I have a better understanding of the girls need to be able to celebrate their mom,
Right.
and me, and sometimes that requires separation and not being able to, or not needing to do it, try to do both on the same day, for logistical reasons and also for mental and emotional reasons. There's very different relationships with their mom,
Yes.
of course,
Mhm.
and sometimes they need to be able to just focus on celebrating her, or focusing on that relationship that day, and I have much more grace for that now than I did before. Um, I also I also learned in my early years, because we encouraged the girls to spend Mother's Day with their mom, um, I learned also to tell my husband what I needed. As
Mhm.
much as we all would love our husbands to be mind readers and be able to pick out the perfect gift or know exactly what to do, that wasn't our situation. And so it didn't take me long to realize, okay, for Mother's Day weekend, I just need to very clearly spell out, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to go away for the weekend, or I want to, whatever it was, eat at a certain restaurant. But we did get into a routine for a few years of having that be, because we had the girls every weekend, Mother's Day weekend while they were with their mom, that would be a weekend that we would get out of town and have a few days away for us. So we got really creative with that weekend and finding ways to make it be what worked well for me and what worked well for us.
Yeah. And I think that's important. And that can happen again when you hit empty nest. We've
Mhm.
had situations where all of the kids are maybe with their spouse's mom or they're on their own traveling or something and my husband and I have ended up with no kids and we went away. I didn't want to stay in the same old routine without having any kids there for Mother's Day because that would have felt sad to me. But for us to just go somewhere and spend the weekend somewhere really felt good. But I do agree with you that we need to help our guys. They're not mind readers. And my husband is the same way. He needs help with gift giving. He doesn't just automatically, even though he knows me well. I mean, we've been married 30 years, but it doesn't mean that when it comes to gift giving, he still needs help. So it's okay. I'm willing to help with that.
Yeah, especially when it's a more emotionally based,
Yes.
recognition. Yeah.
Yes, right. And trying to help them understand our feelings around Mother's Day. There's no way they're going to understand that because they're not walking in the same shoes that we do. And we really do need to help them recognize that this can be a hard day for us. And here's why. And they can't fix it for us, but they can acknowledge our feelings and that they can understand why it can be a hard day. And that goes a long way just in saying, I understand that. I can understand why you're sad today. But again, sometimes we have to train our guys in this acknowledging our feelings. It may not come naturally for them.
Yep. I also need to give props to my husband. He has also turned Mother's Day into a day for him to recognize me,
Yes.
and the role that I fill in the girls' lives and to thank me and celebrate me.
Mm.
So regardless of how the girls choose to do the weekend or the recognition, he is always very good about acknowledging me and thanking me for stepping in.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And again, we might need to help train them. Maybe you didn't with Rich, but sometimes we do need to just let them know that we do feel like there could be just them honoring us in some simple way. It doesn't have to be extravagant or expensive or any of that. So I've had a question come in that says, how much of a role should my husband play in helping with the expectation gaps? I feel like he wants us to be closer than we can right now. That's a common dynamic. What do you say to that?
This is where, hopefully our listeners are familiar with the Crockpot mentality. If you're not, read The Smart Step Family. Ron Deal gives us a great analogy with learning how to cook our step families with time and low heat. And I would say that the Crockpot method works really well here too. It's a combination of for us, it was a combination of Rich taking time to prompt the girls and making sure that they we're learning how to be aware of opportunities to say thank you or to recognize, but then also not put extra pressure or guilt on them. And so it would be for us, it would be something like him saying, "Hey, do you guys want to do something for Mother's Day or Stepmother's Day this year?" And then leaving it up to them, or during the year, not just on Mother's Day, but opportunities to acknowledge that I showed up for something or that I had made dinner, and making sure that they learn to say thank you and stuff. So, um, prompting without a heavy hand, I would say, goes a long way. And then just the years, the time,
Mhm,
there's no replacement for that.
mhm,
Over the time that you have to consistently show up and love your family, and be present, the kids will start to see for themselves how you are involved in their lives and contributing to their lives. So it's a long-term investment. It's a marathon that we're running, and we have to just know that showing up today may not get a thank you today, but it will later. At
mhm,
least it did for us.
mhm. And I agree. I think that happens often. We have to play the long game, is how we say
Mm,
it sometimes. We have to realize that we might not have any rewards that are happening for us right now, but it doesn't mean that our stepkids aren't seeing what we're doing and that we won't see some rewards later. And I know you and I both could give examples of that and how our stepkids have come back later and said, I know I made it hard for you, and be thankful and appreciative. Yours are still younger than mine are, and they really have come back around and been able to recognize and tell me thank you for all those years that I didn't even know if they cared that I was in their life. I mean, some days that's how we feel. But it doesn't mean that they're not seeing what we're doing and taking note. But time, just like you said, time can make a big difference. But I want to talk to women who might still be processing some hard feelings from Mother's Day. Maybe they had some expectations that they felt like were reasonable and they just didn't come through. I'm curious what you would say to that. How do they work through these feelings if they're still struggling from Mother's Day?
that is so hard. For me, there were times that I couldn't bring it to Rich, my husband,
Mhm.
because he's dad and he's protective of his girls, and his go to would be to try to help me understand their perspective. or why maybe they made a decision that they made. And I needed somebody that would sit with me in my feelings,
Right.
and then help me be able to move forward. But I needed a space, and so for me, it was having community.
Yes.
We were fortunate that there was a, blended family group that met in our community, and through that, I met other stepmoms, and then we started, getting connected with Family Life Blended and building a larger community through those events, but there were times that I needed to reach out to another stepmom and just say, "This is hard, and I know in a week or 2 I'll be past it and it will be okay, but right now this hurts,
Mhm.
and I need somebody to just sit with me for a little bit." And having that community, that sisterhood, has been priceless for me.
Mhm. And I think it's realistic that we can't always expect that our husbands are going to see it from our position. Yes, there are times we can talk to them about it, but especially in the early years, for my husband and I, it was easy to get on the defense. And because I'm a biological mom, also, I understand that. If my husband would try to talk to me about something with my girls, I would get defensive. And that's where it does help to have community and maybe somebody else at times that we can talk to. And it's not, again, it's not that they can solve our issue. It's just that maybe somebody can acknowledge our feelings a little better and be willing to say, I know that's hard, Gayla. I'm sorry. I'm sorry your day didn't go like you'd wanted it to. And the other thing I would say, Stacy, is it's okay to just be sad and to lament. We see that in scripture a lot. And sometimes we need to just sit in our feelings and ask the Lord to help us to get to a place of acceptance. If it's a hard reality that we just don't know if it will ever change, I do think that God meets us where we're at. He wants to comfort us in our sadness. And there are times we need to just go to the Lord and pour out our heart. Sometimes I do it through a journal, just writing out my hard feelings, my prayers. It just seems to help me process that better. And the reality is, there are things about step family life that are hard, and there are times we're gonna feel sad. And
Mhm.
those feelings might not get resolved overnight, and that's okay. But the Lord is big enough to walk with us during that. Now, I have another question. Any advice for having older kids? How do we work through the awkwardness of trying to parent together? We didn't raise our kids together. So it sounds like this is somebody who maybe married in and had older kids from the beginning. So didn't try to parent together, didn't raise our kids. Any advice for having older kids?
Well, the oldest for us was 13. So not on the older side of that,
Mhm,
but,
mhm,
still old enough to be very established in who they
right.
were and how they had been raised. The reality was we had 5 years until they were turning 18, and so together with my husband, but then also by myself, I had to accept that, um I was kind of along for the ride, if you will.
Mhm,
He had established how his parenting style was going to be, and I needed to figure out how to come alongside of that,
right.
because it was I don't wanna I hesitate to say too late, but there wasn't enough time to make significant changes.
Yeah.
Patterns had already been established. We do have several couples that we work with that we know that have both brought in kids. I would say that with me being childless, that was almost a benefit for us because we didn't have to try to figure out how to blend 2
Mhm.
sets of children and 2 different parenting styles that late in the game. And so that was kind of a blessing for us. But in some ways, I would say you have to let the established parenting continue, even if it is different. And then you have to just figure out how to partner with each other with the established parenting.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think that our expectations have to come down even further when we're dealing with older kids, especially older teenagers or young adults who they're really all about relationships outside the family. I mean, that's just reality, at
Mhm,
least for that stage. It doesn't mean that they won't come back around, maybe even 10 years later when they begin to have kids of their own and they recognize the value of grandparents. I mean, they might want to come back around, but if it's the early years and these kids are older, I think we do have to realize our influence is going to be pretty limited in the beginning. Now, if we really work at continuing to establish relationships, I do think that that can change, and they might recognize that we could be an influential person for them. But yeah, as far as older kids, we have to do the best we can with our spouse of letting go of some things. Now, if we see things that sometimes we are a little more perceptive. We've got some insight because we're not emotionally tangled the same way a biological parent is. And I do think we might gently trod on things if we feel pretty strongly, we've prayed about it, we believe that this might be something that we bring up very gently with a very humble position. But again, for the most part, just like you said, Stacy, we're kind of in for the ride. And at
Mhm.
least in the beginning. That could change, but at
Yeah.
least in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it also, like you were saying, with bringing in an outside perspective or seeing it from a different view, especially if the biological parent and the child are opposite genders. So the child
Yes.
is the same gender as the step. I know in our situation, there were times that I went to Rich and I said, okay, you have never been a teenage girl in high school. So let me tell you how this is.
Yeah.
And I was able to bring some wisdom that he was just dumbfounded that that was how high school was for girls. And so there's definitely wisdom that you can bring, but you have to carry that carefully.
Oh, that is so true. Yes, that is so true. And then sometimes, like with my stepdaughter, I talk to her more than my husband does now because we are both women. She is a
Yes.
young adult, and there's things that I just think it's easier to talk to me about than to talk to her dad. Again, those are things then that can develop over time. So I would say, we never give up hope and praying about relationships if they're not in the place that we want them to be. God is in the position of redeeming relationships all the time. I've seen him do it in my family. And I want to encourage our ladies, don't ever give up hope or ever quit praying if a relationship isn't where you want it. But there's other realities in the month of May also, Stacy. There's graduations, there's end of year events. If you have young kids, you get thrown into this cycle of seeing the former spouses more than you want because everybody shows up at these end of year events, or maybe there's a wedding. And this can be so awkward, in my opinion. I'm just curious if you have any advice on, how do you help with this awkwardness? How do you deal with this?
A lot of grace. A lot of grace.
It's good.
I can tell you that we did 4 different high school graduations. Um, at none of them did I get to take the pictures that I would have liked to have taken.
Oh.
Um, have the time with the child that we would have liked to have had, because they just had so many people that they needed to interact with and focus on. And so it again, it's the lamenting and the letting go,
Mhm.
being incredibly flexible. I just most of the days I tried to just go along for the ride. For us, 3 of the graduations were another opportunity to have the parents of the graduates stand, so that awkward
Ugh.
standing thing again.
Oh,
But in this
gee.
situation, their mom was there too, which made it even more complicated because then I was like, "Oh."
What did you do? How did you handle that?
The first time I didn't know what to do, so I stayed seated, and the girls noticed and brought it to their mom's attention, and she very graciously reached over and encouraged me to stand up too.
Oh, I
And so
love
that
that.
was very nice, very nice. And then for the others, it just so happened that I was sitting on the end on the other side of my husband, and then it was the girls and his former wife further down. And so that one was more comfortable for me because then I felt that there was more separation and I could comfortably stand.
Wow. And you know what is interesting about that is how the girls recognized that you should be standing. I think that speaks volumes about your relationship with your stepdaughters.
Yeah, and we weren't that many years in. We were, I think, 4 or so years in for the first graduation, and so, it was very unexpected and, very nice.
But you know what else that says to me is sometimes in our stepmom role, we don't recognize how our stepkids view us. And we're thinking we really don't matter. We're not considered a mom. We stay seated. And yet the stepdaughter was saying, "No, you are a mom. You are a maternal figure, obviously," and she wanted you to know that and be recognized for that. I think that's a good thing for stepmoms to realize. Again, they're seeing more than what we realize in regards to how we are impacting them and their lives.
Yeah,
Wow, I love that.
and those are the pieces that I've chosen to hang on to.
Mhm.
I make mental memories, if you will, of moments that casually happen without any prompting. It's not on a holiday or anything. We're just spending time together. And I see one of the girls do something that they picked up from me, or they choose to come spend time with us. And that's where I get my fulfillment and my security in my role, more so than the external and social expectations of a month such as May.
Right. Right, and it is 1 month. Mother's Day is 1 day. Those are things that we have to remember, and if it doesn't go as we want, start again, ask for God's help, and continue plodding along in this marathon that you are in. I heard a stepmom say one time that step parenting will test a marriage more than any other family relationship. Do you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Most of Rich and I's differences of opinion, if you
Mhm.
will, were about something to do with our blended family,
Yeah.
parenting or financial decisions around the kids. We are great together, and the benefits of our marriage have far outweighed the challenges of step family life. But the blending the family pieces and navigating a bio parent and a step parent role have definitely been the most challenging and have given us the most friction.
Yeah, and I think we have to come in recognizing that the marriage still needs to be the foundation, even though these kids came first. And that's going to look differently in different marriages. But it is an important piece because it's easy for that marriage to crumble, especially when we bring biological kids in that we have a longer history with than we do our spouse. And it's easier then to kind of bend uh, to the needs and the wishes of the kids, but the marriage still needs to be an integral part, and our kids need to see that. They need to understand that this marriage is important, and we're going to treat it as the foundation and do what we need to just keep it going because step family life can take a toll on a marriage. I think that's what you're saying, and I would agree with that. Now we're going to wrap up quickly. If there's any more questions, y'all throw them up. But here's one thing I want to talk about is the adversity that we're talking about. And for me, God has used adversity to help me see some things in myself that maybe needed to change in my situation to focus on being a little more gentle with my tone, being more patient, considering how to be kinder in situations instead of considering what I needed. Am I considering what the kids need? I wasn't always great at that in the beginning. But I'm wondering if God has used your stepmom role to refine you in any way.
Oh, yes. Oh my goodness, yes. I had no idea how selfish I am until I became a stepmother. Yeah, God has definitely revealed some things that I needed to work on. He has used me being a stepmom to draw me closer to Him. I've learned more about practicing the fruits of the spirit. He gave
Yes,
me those really early on when I felt like I was just screwing everything up and I had ruined their family and made a mess of everything. And he just said, if you do these, you're not going to screw it up. Just do one of these. And so, um, but I've also learned more about sacrificial love and
mm,
grace. The grace that I've been asked to extend to my family has helped me understand on a minuscule level the amount of love and grace that God has for me. Um,
absolutely.
and the grace that I've been asked to extend is nothing compared to the grace that He extends to me. And so it has grown me, it has shaped me, it has drawn me closer to God in so many ways. We have sweet, sweet devotional time together now because that is what gets me through this journey and gives me the strength to keep making the right choices and doing this well.
Absolutely. And I think that takes some introspection on our Not saying that you have to be perfect and that you're never going to mess up in your stepmom role, but when you do, ask for forgiveness. Ask God to help you pick yourself up and start again. We don't want to get paralyzed in our pain or paralyzed in our mistakes, because Satan would love to use that for us and not be effective in the role that God has called us to. But I do think that there are times that God is wanting to refine us in ways, and we have to be sensitive to what He's trying to teach us through His Word, through others, through even through relationships and small groups. There are things that, if we're sensitive, I believe we can see how God might be prompting us to consider ways that He wants to refine us. Stacy, tell me, are there any other thoughts or nuggets that you want to share before we send you off?
This has been such a great conversation. One of the things that, as we were kind of preparing for this, and I was thinking through things that I wanted to share, God reminded me that somewhere along the way, He has helped me change my messaging. I can't tell you how many times in our first few years of being married, I said to myself, or I said to my husband, I didn't sign up for this.
Oh,
This was not what I signed up for. And God, again, through that amazing grace that He gives us and the teaching that He's been doing in me, He has helped me reshape that into I didn't know I was signing up for this.
oh, I love that.
And that has really kind of helped me change my attitude. It draws me from more of a negative, resentful mindset to a, okay, this is unexpected. I didn't know that this was coming, but we're going to figure out how to do this and how to do it well. And so I would just encourage any of the women that are still in the really hard years and find themselves saying, I didn't sign up for this. Try reshaping that to, I didn't know I was signing up for this.
Yes, that is excellent. And I do think we have to be careful of the messages that we're saying to ourselves, because those negative ones can just continue to feed us in ways, and then we're going to act out from that in negative ways. So, changing that, just like what you said, that gives you a different opportunity to consider. It's okay. Maybe this isn't what I expected, but I can still, I can figure this out. I can change my messaging. Yeah. Stacy,
Yeah.
that's really good. Thank you for joining us. If our viewers want to connect with you further, where might they reach you?
Oh, Gayla, thanks so much for having me. Probably the best is my Family Life email address, which would be stacy.holsapple@familylife.com.
That's great. So there may be women out there who've heard a piece of your story, and maybe they want to ask you questions or just tap into your wisdom a little more. And thank you for giving us that address. So great to have you here, Stacy.
Thank you for having me.
Ladies, make plans to join us next month, June the 10th, for my conversation with Gil Stewart on our June Women and Blended Families. We're going to talk about understanding our men. Gil is a therapist. He's a dad and a stepdad. He's been in the blended family for a long time. And he's going to help us understand more about how we can encourage and help build up our men in ways that will help them thrive in their stepdad or their biological dad roles. Also, registration is open for our annual summit on step family ministry, where we want to equip you as a ministry leader or perhaps a counselor to serve blended families in your church or community. Mark your calendar for October the 23rd through the 24th. This is a live event in Nashville, Tennessee. Rondell and I and many other speakers will be there. We would love to see you there. Find all the details for that at summitonstepfamilies.com. And I want to let you know about a book I have coming out in July. I've updated my devotional book, previously titled Step Parenting with Grace. It is now titled Beautifully Blended 101 Devotions to Encourage Couples in Blended Families. These are short devotions meant to offer nuggets of hope and wisdom and point you toward biblical answers for blended family dynamics. And I'll tell you more about that as we get closer to publication. Be sure that you're following Family Life Blended on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Have your notifications turned on so that you're notified when we go live. I love having you join me live every month for our conversation. God bless you, ladies. Thank you for joining us. If May has been a hard month for you, my prayer is that you will look to our Lord Jesus Christ for help. He sees you and he will walk the journey with you. Hebrews 10:23 says, "Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful." Keep pressing on, ladies. I'll see you next time.